Well, welcome today. I'm here with my sister, Laureen Shearmeister, and we're going to be talking about plants as medicine through history. There's quite a backstory here, Laureen, on how you basically got into this. Why don't you share with us a little bit of your history as how you got to this point in time to where you can speak authoritatively on the subject?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thanks for having me here
I'm
today.
so
It's
excited.
Pretty fun. So as a career, I was in healthcare. I was a nurse and worked as a nurse in different capacities, cardiac, women's health, and became a nurse practitioner and then have a degree in public health. But as I was going through this time with patients one-on-one, they would often tell me about something that they used for their health that was a plant. And in the Western model, we generally were advised to be suspect or skeptical of any of these kind of non-traditional, well, they're actually very traditional, but non-mainstream types of treatment. So I would go, oh, well, whatever. But they kept coming back and people kept saying, this, I take this and it works, and this I take and it works. And I personally have always loved to have a garden and have plants all around. And so I thought, I'm going to start to look into this. And there were...
Now, how long ago was this?
Let's see, it's 2025, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Okay.
I was kind of well into my career at that point. But there was a...
Now, we should mention my mother was a nurse practitioner as well.
A nurse, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have healing in the family.
Yeah, we have healing in the family.
Yeah. And some of the most amazing herbalists have come from Portugal, which is where they're from.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, big herbal background in healthcare. So I started to study, the plants as medicine. It's called different things. People will call it herbalism, botanical medicine, plant medicine. It's called a lot of different things. But I took a course in a 6-month herbal intensive. So for 6 months, I studied plants as medicine. And that's when I started experimenting first on myself. So I would make these teas that might help your heart or give you more energy. And I thought, wow, these things really work.
Some of those teas that give you more energy, I'd kind of like to maybe get the recipes for that, because I've got a couple lethargic podcast helpers, and that would really be something that would be very, very helpful for me personally to be able to get people moving around here. Go ahead.
Yeah. We can get a 2-gallon jar just to have, right? For everybody's use there.
And another thing is, psychologically speaking, even on these herbs, even mentioning it give me like a mental uplift that I even have a possibility to change their lethargic behavior. Right. So let's continue. I don't want to get off too much of a tangent here.
So I started using them on myself and found benefits. And then I started using them on my family. I'd say, okay, here, you take this. And then I'd kind of watch them, and then they'd report back to me, and I realized that it was pretty simple to make, as simple as making a tea that you would drink over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. This isn't something that has a immediate boom effect, like taking a ibuprofen that you might have your pain relieved in 20 minutes. Some medicines that come from plants can do that, and many
now some of you that are watching right now that smoke dope, they get an immediate effect off of a marijuana weed, right? But, in this particular case, we have to wait for the results a little bit longer.
Sometimes,
no instant gratification.
Yeah.
All right.
So plants, I saw the benefit of plants, and I knew that many plants were already in our pharmaceutical system. Like I was in cardiac, and we'd give the drug digitalis, which comes from the plant foxglove. It's a beautiful flower, but that's been used in both historic and modern medicine for a long time. So I then went and took one deeper step and went to a 2-year fellowship program, the University of Arizona, in integrative medicine, because I knew this stuff works.
Now, hold on. You just used a term, integrative medicine.
Right.
Share with us what that means and what does that term encompass?
Right. And that, it's a great question because we hear a lot of terms overlying healthcare these days. Integrative is a term that was coined by Andrew Weil that means using any intervention for healthcare that has value, and in the case of this program, scientific research behind it. So this means it's all the plant medicine, but it also could be guided imagery, listening to positive imagery. It could be sound medicine. It could be chiropractic. It could be lots of different interventions that are used for people's health that actually work.
Now, you
Not
know what?
things
Now,
that don't
you're
work.
saying that. We're talking about interventions in health with plants.
Now we're
that
talking
we
about
were
plants.
talking prior to the show has roots that can be traced 60,000 years back.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, let me read this to you. This I like to start some of my historical talks with this a few paragraphs from the book Green Pharmacy by Barbara Griggs. It's the history and evolution of Western medicine. But you can imagine that mankind did not always have a CVS or a Rite Aid outside when they went out their cave. All they had was the world that was in front of them, which was plants and rocks and water and air and all that. And so here's an image for you that is true. So in the grave of Neanderthal man in a cave in Iraq, grains of flower pollens were found thickly scattered in the soil surrounding his bones. The family and friends of this dead man, it became clear, had surrounded his body with clusters of flowers and branches at his summertime funeral. Analyzed some 60,000 years later, after the death of this unknown caveman, the pollens were identified as coming from 8 different genera of flowering plants, all of which still flourish in that geographic area, which is Shanidar in Iraq. Of these 8 species, 7 are still used today for medicine in dozens of different ways by the local people and by people around the world. For example, the mucilaginous roots of the marshmallow plant from the Althea genus is a soothing remedy for sore throats and irritated intestines. The dark flowered grape hyacinth is valued as a diuretic. Yarrow, which is Achillea millifolia, is still used as a general tonic, as well as an insect repellent, and ephedra comes from a potent remedy for asthma and a cardiac stimulant. So such plants may have been chosen to grace this primitive burial site because they were the brightest and most appealing flowers at the time, but we have no reason to assume that this Neanderthal family didn't understand the medicinal value of these plants and placed them at this primitive grave. There is no place on earth in which some form of doctoring with plants has not been practiced. So we may reasonably believe that these beneficial plants were an important part of the life of that man. Herbal medicine is the oldest form of therapy practiced by mankind. And I have a picture of that cave and that burial site. And this is an imaginative picture of what that scene would have looked like 60,000 years ago. And then the next picture is actual X-ray imagery of, it's not even X-ray. It's just a picture of the bones. And you can see in the upper part of that slide, that is the actual cave at Shanidar. The middle is the bones that were found that were scattered with the pollen around it. And the lower picture is a recreation, a museum recreation of what this would have looked like. So this goes back as far as we have been here.
Recorded history.
Right. So this is
I
pre-recorded.
don't know that we have recorded prehistory because
Right.
60,000 years there wasn't anybody writing anything down.
No, exactly. And when we get into so this is the connection, the thread that we have from this historical moment that we have a substance of, but we can imagine that as long as mankind has lived in the world, they have had to use the plants not only for food, clothing, shelter, but also medicine. And that thread, the thing that I want to bring forth is that thread continues to this very day.
That is just an amazing piece of information you're sharing with us here. So you got interested in that and you went on this journey.
Yeah.
So you were telling me a little bit earlier about how when you were doing your nursing, how people would come in with bundles or shopping bags full of supplements and how they chose these to use. And it's kind of a random information process that we've got going on here in America about that, isn't it?
Well, that leaps us way forward. So why don't you hold that thought? We'll come back to it. And let me pull us through the centuries a bit into the historical.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we go to this pre-recorded history time, we think, well, what do we have in recorded history? Well, we know that in the pre-recorded history time, information was passed along by apprenticeship, by storytelling, by people, talking to people. And it was men and women, but often it was women holding the health part of herbalism and history.
Similar like Homer and the Iliad. It was like all verbal. It was
right.
It was basically verbal history was brought along. There was no written word. It was like hometown facts, basically homespun history, and that's how the history of their peoples, but also the history of their medicine.
Right, and there would be songs is how people
to remember
and stories, and that was like this is another topic, but the Vikings had the sagas, the Viking sagas that they would repeat, and each generation would learn these stories. But we do have eventually written documentation that we have found, and one of the oldest documents of recorded herbal history is the Ebers papyrus, which was found by a German archaeologist in Egypt. His name was Ebers, and he found a papyrus that had document on it almost 700 different formulas of plant medicine. And that was found about 1500 BC, and the estimation was the plant formularies were used 1,000 years earlier and from beyond. So we have this Ebers papyrus, which started to write this stuff down. Then we have the Yellow Emperor's Treatise on Medicine, which came out of China. So surprisingly, different places all over the world are using plants that are right outside their door because that's what they have. And so then they categorize them formally in different ways. So we have in Egypt, the Ebers Papyrus. In China, we have the Yellow Emperors, which was multiple documents that were recorded over and over and over. And that was about 2900 BC, long time ago. Then we have, becoming a modern in the European world, we have this Dioscorides. This is a book on this man who was Greek, but he was a Greek physician to the Roman army. So he followed the Roman army all around while it was conquering its territory to become the Roman emperor.
Around the Mediterranean.
All around the Mediterranean and, in some of what's now the Middle East, the Northern Africa. So he was going around there and he was meticulously observing what people were using in that area for plants as medicine. And there were some documents prior to his historically changing document called the Materia Medica. So people would write down what a plant was used, but they wouldn't always write everything down, or they wouldn't necessarily say what part of the plant or how they used it. So he meticulously created what was called the first Materia Medica, which translates from Latin as the materials that are used for medicine. So he would have page after page, and there we have some pictures of Materia Medicas that come from around the world. But he would write the picture of the plant. He would write the growing cycle of the plant. He would write what the plant was used for. He would write exactly how to prepare the plant. And he created this big document that was never there before, that Nobody had put all in one place in the way that he did. And so this document that he used, his Materia Medica, was about 2,400 years ago, and it was used over the next 1,500 years as one of the treatises on how to use botanical medicine. So there's other Materia Medica that come from different parts of the world. I have pictures of one from the Byzantine era, one from Tibetan, one from Spain. So everybody started to kind of create these documents. And so now we have this plant medicine codified into these documents that like other people can take and learn from and use, because many of the plants are all over. Yarrow is found almost everywhere in the Mediterranean climate in the world, which is a lot of places. Oak trees are on every continent except Antarctica. So there's a lot of plants that come down through history that people have used the same way, interestingly, in completely different parts of the world.
That's just fascinating, and how that information was carried through history. How does the journey continue? We have antiquity. Now when the things started to evolve a little bit more to where people are selling products or providing them for their communities, doctors using them, sourcing them, were the doctors required to go out and actually harvest the plants, or did they have people bring the plants to them? How was it distributed in ancient times?
Oh, so in
Were
old times, right.
they collect it themselves?
Oh, yeah.
Or was there like a witch doctor, somebody that had access to these plants and utilized them and knew the knowledge of them?
Right. So we have one more written piece, because these are male documents that I brought forward. But Hildegard of Bingen was was a Renaissance amazing woman who also wrote down and used a lot of things on plant medicine in her monastery, and it was what was practiced was what's called bioregional herbalism. It's a big word for, you used what was around you.
That sounds like something was developed at UC Berkeley.
Yeah. So
I mean, I don't know, but is that
so Dioscorides had this huge geographic area that he was pulling plants from. So he would take them and he would save the seeds and he would write down the plants and he would bring them and he would grow them. But everybody else would be looking around where they lived and learning about the plants from people from before, watching animals to learn about the plants and how they work. Some people even feel like the plants were communicating with them to tell them how they might work for healing. So what was around in your backyard, so where they got them, is they would get them themselves. They would get them themselves either by what's called wildcrafting. So you go out into the woods and you're recognizing plants, you're gathering it at a particular time of year when the medicine is potent, and you're bringing it back. Or you're growing it in your own area and preserving it in a multitude of ways. But the simplest way to preserve it is just by drying the plant, right? So you dry the plant. But there's a lot of other ways that these plants were preserved for use when they weren't in season. They were steeped in alcohol, and then the alcohol has the medicine. They were steeped in oil, then the oil would have the medicine in it. The oil, you put beeswax in the oil, and now you have a salve, so you have something that's more portable. So there was all these ways to have the medicine be useful, even when you didn't have the plant around. And so that became how these plants continued to provide remedies for people. And I think if you go on the next slide, we have the herbalist. So this is a picture of a room that was behind a castle in the Czech Republic, Prague, where there were several people who were working for the royalty there. There was the sword maker, there was the baker back there was the chicken person, and then there was a whole room for the herbalist. And the herbalist was an important person for the community and for the health of the castle. And that person would have their whole variety of medicine making things around. And this is I think, a pretty fascinating view of some of the old apothecaries what they might have looked like in the 1500s and 1600s now we're coming into. So this is so we still have plant medicine because plants are still the main thing that we have to heal for ourselves. There's also prayer, of course, and there's waters, but the plants themselves are still our main focus of
So you
healing.
spoke of this document that's 2,500 years old.
Yeah.
And was used for over 1,500 years.
Mm-hmm.
At what point does medicine start documenting more and more of this in a formal way to preserve it for history? Is there a point when, okay, we've had this 1,500-year-old document, we've been using it, but now we've got to upgrade it, we've got to go a little bit more, and that's almost hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, or last year? When did all of this start becoming more and more into the social ethos of our society? Because it seems that it's a very hot topic these days.
Yeah, and so the modern times, the Materia Medica came all the way through like the 1800s. And then there was a more formalized, extensive document called a pharmacopoeia. Okay, so a pharmacopoeia, if you've heard of I don't even know if people use it anymore, but you've heard the physician's desk reference?
Yes.
So that's all pharmaceuticals that have been created, manufactured by the pharmaceutical company is in this physician's desk reference. The pharmacopoeia was the same kind of document, but for plants. So it was all plant medicine and what we knew about what part of the plant we use, how we use the plant, what formulas work for the plant, what research, exactly, combinations, what research has been done on the plant. So the pharmacopoeias have been a thread from about the middle of the 18th century, maybe up to today. There is a U.S. pharmacopoeia today in the United States. There's a World Health Organization pharmacopoeia. In the middle picture there, that green book, and I have it here, but I don't have it on myself. But that is the German E-Commission book on botanical medicine. And the Germans have really taken botanical medicine, ratcheted up a notch. They have a whole branch of what they would be their FDA, their Food and Drug Administration, that does nothing but evaluate plant medicine and botanical medicine. So are the
Germans kind of like a leading authority in the Western world on this subject?
There are many, but yes, the Germans have definitely, by the creation of this German Commission E Materia Medica document, I don't know if they call it a Materia Medica, but they have really led the way on. And if you go to a pharmacy in Germany, like the equivalent of our CVS, half the products in there will have been plant-based. And they've been using, like most people maybe in our world here have heard of arnica. Arnica maybe as something that soothes sore muscles and joints. We use it a lot now. It's a very fabulous. It's a high alpine flower that grows in the high alpine regions in Germany, of course, but it grows actually in the Sierra Nevadas. We have arnica species also. And that will be like right on the shelf, front and center for sore muscles and bones, as opposed to something created like a Bengay or although Bengay will have menthol in it, which is a plant base. So this research comes forward right to today, that this plant thread from that 60,000-year-old grave is now formalized, but it's still plant medicine right now.
You have some other definitions here, of different nomenclature, so to speak, inside the industry. Functional medicine. Right.
So when we go to get our healthcare these days, there's a lot of choices that we have, and you hear these terms. So integrative medicine, I explained, as looking at all possibilities of different remedies for a certain issue. Functional medicine is looking very specifically at a body system, like your cardiac system or your immune system, and lifting it to be function at the highest level possible. So they're looking at a particular system, organ system. You used the term complementary medicine in our last talk in the other room, and that's a great term too, and you used it absolutely correctly. And what it means is you are complementing or adding to and already we might call a Western medicine protocol. So like if you were going to go to have chemotherapy or radiation, that's your mainstream protocol. Complementary to that, you may use some remedies to enhance your healing from that or fortify your body from that. So those would be complementary things that might not be offered to you in the Western model in oncology. There's another term called alternative therapies, which means you have chosen not to do maybe what mainstream medicine has offered. You're going to do something alternative to what is the standardized practice for that. I'm not saying not to do any of these. I'm saying they all have their value in place. Did you say another term?
Well, I'm looking at it here, a naturopathic doctor.
Oh, right.
So would that be a doctor that specializes in this genre of medicine?
So a naturopathic doctor is a doctor that goes to a whole different curriculum than your Western doctor that is your like your gynecologist or your renal kidney doctor or your heart doctor. Those go to standard medical programs in the United States. They get an undergraduate for 4 years, a graduate for 4 years in medicine. They get their doctorate of medicine. Now, a naturopath gets an undergraduate. Then they go to 4 years to a naturopathic doctor program. It's different. The focus is on herbs, supplements, and
they'll actually make personalized herb compounds for you individually.
Yeah.
I have a friend of mine is a doctor like that in Sicily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the first thing they do is they look at your tongue.
Oh, absolutely. That's an ancient Chinese and Ayurvedic remedy also. You learn
what are they looking for? When he looks at the tongue, what is he actually observing? I'm kind of curious. He looked at my tongue and go, I don't have much time left. But at any rate, other than that, all
kinds of things. The color of your tongue, the indentations of your tongue, how your tongue fits on your teeth. Do you have a scalloped edge of your tongue that is because it makes room for where your teeth are? Do you have fur on your tongue? Is what part of your tongue might be looked inflamed because they're analogous to different parts of your body, like the cardiac, your heart is on the back, your kidneys are maybe on the side. And so they're looking and seeing if there's any like white
So this
coating.
isn't acupuncture.
No.
This is a completely different thing.
Diagnostic.
And he's looking at my tongue, and just from that observation, he told me, come to my office tomorrow and I will put together a remedy for you for what would make you feel more healthy. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it that day, but I'm coming back next week and maybe I'll get my remedy then.
Yeah, looks like
or he might have a new tongue inspection.
Yeah, see if you've evolved.
Now, what is an allopathic doctor?
So an allopathic doctor is the term that in the herbal or just general healthcare field we use for someone who's been trained in the Western medical model, which is most of the physicians, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, osteopaths that we go to today. They were trained in that model. So it's the major providers of our healthcare today.
How does the general mainstream medical community feel about this vein of herbalists and natural plant medicines?
Right.
Is there like a general vibe about it? Or are they accepting? Is it considered witch doctors? What do we got going on here?
All of the above. So, yeah, all of the above. So I recently retired from a 40-year career in medicine, right?
Okay.
So in healthcare, nursing. So when I first came out, it was highly suspicious of anything that was of the plant world. It was considered not valuable, folkloric, wives' tale. And like I said, as I kept learning about what people got the benefit from, I thought, actually there is something to this.
You're hearing it from people that actually got results.
Right.
It's not some people, try this, maybe it'll work. They used it. They are basically prophesizing this is helping.
Right. And so I thought there's something going on here. So I took the herbal remedy class, and then I think it was 2000, the year 2000, Andrew Weil created this integrative medicine program for physicians because he also found lots of remedies in the plant world and different kinds of remedies that weren't used mainstream in healthcare that he felt were really valuable and that physicians needed to be trained in. And so there started this integrative medicine program to learn about these in kind of the Western model. So there are there's a lot of remedies that have a great history, like chamomile tea goes back centuries. We all know chamomile tea is a calming herb. You take chamomile tea and you feel quieter, calmer. This has been going on for centuries. We don't need a randomized double-blind trial to know that chamomile is helpful. It's been helpful to mankind for a long, long time. But in the integrative medicine program, the Western model really likes research and science-based information. And so Andrew Weil gathered all this information, and there was the talk, like when I was in my early healthcare career, that there's no information on this. We don't know anything about this. We don't know if this stuff is safe, which is actually absolutely ridiculous. I don't think anybody's been harmed by a cup of chamomile tea. All right.
Maybe.
I was going to say somebody's going to say they had an allergy. Yeah. So somebody probably was, but not compared to how many people have been harmed by pharmaceutical in creations. But so he created this program so physicians could go through and also learn the value of all these things and start incorporating it into their practices. So they've graduated over 20,000 physicians, I think, out. Or is it, I don't know if that's correct, 10,000. But anyhow, over the course of 25 years, a lot of physicians have been educated now in this integrative model, that there are a lot of other ways besides pharmaceuticals and surgery that can help people with interventions.
From what I understand, we're still discovering so much. I've read some articles where teams of scientists are still scouring the jungles of South America, harvesting plants, finding out their uses. Even to this day, they're discovering uses of plants.
Absolutely. And half of the new pharmaceuticals that are created today come from plants. They're plant-based. And those ones, interestingly enough, or not so surprisingly, are the least recalled and least rejected by the human body because they come from a plant source. So the pharmaceuticals that are often recalled or have side effects that are damaging to the human body are often the ones that are created synthetically, that aren't the ones that come from plants. So that's from James Duke, who was one of the leading FDA evaluators of all plant medicine. There's something else I wanted to talk about, and it kind of gets into a question that you had about where this stuff is today, and that's the definition of an herbalist. So this is a simple word, right? Herbalist, herb, somebody who studies herbs. Now, this is where it gets a bit tricky because there isn't any standardized education for someone who's an herbalist. Anybody, you could put
I could be an herbalist.
You could be an herbalist.
That's scary.
You could be an herbalist today. You could put a placard right outside this door here and say, Bob's Herbal Remedies, come on in. Or you could, and so herbalists realized that they were having a credibility problem because you could have no education. You could have maybe gone through a couple herbal intensive courses like I did. I took a 6-month in herbal, then a 5-month, and then I continued to take lots of education on herbs. And then, or you could have been apprenticed by somebody who was a very good herbalist, and you may not have any formal education, but you could be pretty good. You could also be an intuitive herbalist. There's people who really get the plants without having had a lot of hands-on education. The American Herbalist Guild felt that they needed some kind of standardization, so they created what was called the AG, the American Herbalist Guild Herbalist, an AGH. And if you've gone through the American Herbalist Guild program and you can put those credentials behind your name, now you have done over 400 hours of study, you've had 800, you've had 400 patients, you've had an apprenticeship. So there is, if you want to know where your person got their education or information, now you know if they have that sign behind their name that there is a pretty darn good amount of information that that person has on herbalism. It doesn't mean other people who call themselves herbalists are bad, but if you want to know what they know.
Well, when you're saying that brings it to another topic of all these supplements that are out there. You look at the label, you see what's inside of it, But how do you know that the amount of whatever ingredient in there is actually useful to you? If it's a degraded quality, how can one know? Let's say, for example, you say, well, we need to get some CoQ10, or we need to get some other kind of thing into your system, vitamin D, whatever it might be. You go down to the store, you buy a vitamin D, you figure, okay, I got it. Maybe so, maybe not.
Exactly. So this is a real dilemma today. And I want to talk, I was reminded, so I want to talk about the DSHEA Act, which is the Diet Supplement Health Education Act that was from 1994.
Okay, so the government's got involved in it.
But in an offhand way. So we'll talk about why that's good and why it might be bad for you as the consumer.
Okay.
So the DSHEA Act, which was introduced by Orrin Hatch in 1994, was passed and was in response to growing pressure to regulate the herbal supplement industry. The herbal supplement industry kind of pushed back and said, hey, we want freedom really to create what we want to create. We don't want to have our products really scrutinized or highly regulated. So there was a bill that was going through Congress at the time that would have highly regulated the supplement industry, just as it has the pharmaceutical industry, which, with the pharmaceutical industry, it has very high standards for knowing what's in that, how many milligrams, that's exactly what you're getting, that the manufacturing facility is clean, all those things. So there's good things about regulation in some ways. So the DSHEA Act was a watered-down version of this bill that was killed, that didn't pass. So the DSHEA Act says you can't say that a product cures something, but you can say that it supports the structure and function of the product. So you can have a product and it will say supports kidney function. That's all you'll say. It won't say helps when you need dialysis.
Now I remember hearing this type of verbiage.
Yeah. So
supports.
Right. So you'll see
Complements.
that. Right. So what the DSHEA Act did not do was require that the supplements industry actually, exactly. There's no requirement for them to be effective. There's no requirement for them to actually have in that capsule what they say is on the label. There's no requirement that it works or where it came from.
I work with a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
This is like with plants. But,
that's with plants. Yeah. So what it did do was require certain things on the label. So you had to have where it was manufactured. You have to have what you say is in there, how many milligrams, where the address of the company is, where the product came from. And there is in that bill something called good manufacturing practices, which means the FDA can come in and look at your facility and make sure that it's clean and that you're keeping documentation on where you got your product and how you're keeping it. Isn't it a clean place? But there's no requirement for effectiveness or safety. None.
So how do we know as a consumer,
right,
when we go into a Vitamin Shoppe or whatever it might be, and we see 5 different products and maybe they St. John's wort or something of that nature? How do we know which one to buy? How do we know which one is the true effective product and the other one an imposter?
Yeah, you don't.
Is there such thing as imposter herbal remedies?
Absolutely. I mean, we talked initially about how this reminds me of a story when we went to Venice, and we were in Venice, and we were laughingly told by one of our tour guides that the Venetians have been very good at removing the money from any tourist wallet that comes into the city for products that could be
for thousands of years.
Thousands of years. They're very good.
Out of your pocket.
Yeah. And so this made me think about how in the food and supplement industry, they're also very good at extracting money from your pocket without you really knowing that their product is going to help you in the way you want it to, because there's no need to evaluate that product for either effectiveness or safety. So I know we've seen exposés, I've seen many of them in newspapers that say we took 15 St. John's wort products, brought them to an independent lab and evaluated them. And 3 of them didn't have any St. John's wort in them at all. 2 of them had half rice bran and half old St. John's wort something. 1 of them had St. John's wort, but was also adulterated with this other herb. And they found that all out by DNA testing. Now, sadly, there are many good companies that really are very caring and careful about what they have in their products. They want to have a good product. They don't want to have bad press or news about their industry. They believe, because they know that these things work and they know that people do well by them. So not having regulation puts the onus on you to figure out if this product is any good. And there are ways to do that. You read, I have even called companies and I'll say, how do you evaluate your product? What testing? Many companies will put their product through independent testing. They'll say, okay, you take our product and you see if what we have in there is really in there. And then they bring it back. And there's labels on products that will say independent testing done by, and you'll see NSF, the National Sanitation Foundation. If that logo is on your product, you know that it's gone through independent testing and it probably has in it what it says it has in it. There's also the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, USP, will have a logo on there. And you'll know that that company gave their product to the U.S. Pharmacopoeia for third-party testing, and it has in it what it says it has in it. So
is there a right or a wrong way to use some of these supplements, and can they basically take the effectiveness out of that plant through processing?
Right. So, sure. I mean, there's another good book called The Business of Botanicals, which that shows you how all around the world plants are harvested, kept, stored, moved around country to country, brought to manufacturing clinics. And by the time some of these plants have gotten to that manufacturing process, they've been walked on by goats and rams. They've been stored in bundles in 110 temperature sheds. They've been carted across the ocean in an ocean in a boat, and they're 6 or 8 months away from the time they were harvested. And the value of that plant compared to one that was harvested and manufactured within a few days in the location that it was at, that's going to be a much more valuable plant, which leads me to, it's really great for you to grow a few of these things in your own backyard. I'm going to mention one more thing back on the supplement place. You can call the company and find out about their practices. And there's also an organization called Consumer Lab. That's a subscription. You would have to pay for that. But they routinely test a variety of different supplements of the same type, like your CoQ10. They may take 15 or 20 different companies that make CoQ10, and they put them through their independent laboratory testing. And they say, okay, this company says, yes, this one says there's 300 milligrams or 150 milligrams in here, and there is 150 milligrams. They say that it doesn't have this contaminant in it. It does not have the contaminant in it. They say that, this is the cost of it, and they do it by cost. And then, so once I subscribe to that, and you start looking at these reports, and all of a sudden these certain companies just continue to rise to the top. So you'll see a company that always seems to have high value. So then I go, okay, I don't need to see that report on this company's CoQ10. I'm just going to imagine they put the same quality practices into creating that they did this other one that was evaluated. So you start knowing that there are certain companies that you're going to stick with. So that's one way.
How does the viewer that's looking at our podcast find out who these companies are? Are you going to have a place that they can go and you can help them along that way?
Well, I do a lot of supplement evaluation for people in my integrative medicine practice. I don't follow people I don't diagnose, I don't do lab tests, I don't follow with treatment plans, but I do help people navigate diagnoses that they have and integrative practices that might be helpful for them. And I also can look at whatever array of supplements they're taking and just give them an idea if they're valuable or not for what they want.
What about people that are on traditional pharmaceutical medicines and then supplementing those medicines with the herbal remedies that you're talking about, is there conflicts there? Can there be situations arise from the combinations of those two mediums?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great question because I think people often think, well, if it's a plant, if it's natural, it's got to be safe, it's got to be healthy and fine. It's not the case at all. I mean, we know that did Socrates have to drink hemlock? That was quite a natural plant that led to his
Kill them.
demise rather quickly. So not all plants are safe, and plants because I think these plants are really effective, and I found them dramatically effective. They do have a lot of ways to change your body's biochemistry and function, that they can either aid or interfere with the pharmaceuticals that you're taking. Sometimes they potentiate it and make them work greater than you want them to, particularly like blood thinning medicine. You don't want to take certain herbs when you're taking a blood thinner because it'll make your blood thin even more, and then you're in trouble. Some of them interfere with the function of like maybe chemotherapeutic agents. You may say, oh, take all these medicines while you're taking your chemo, only to find out that this particular herb is going to stop your chemo from being effective as it could be. So those are issues that I feel like people need a little bit of help. If you're going to work with both herbal medicines and pharmaceuticals, I would say if you're not the person that's really interested in diving into the research behind it, get somebody to help you out. Find an integrative medicine practitioner like me, nurse practitioner, or somebody, or a physician. There are a lot more physicians now that understand and are interested in the pharmaceutical world. And I used to tell my friends would tell me in the medicine world, they'd say, we're really worried about you because like you use herbs and those are dangerous. I'd say, I think they're not quite as dangerous as all the pharmaceuticals that we're giving with all the side effects that maybe we don't want. But I realized the reason I went to the integrative medicine program is I wanted to be a bridge. I wanted to have the credentials that the Western world would respect. So I went through a postgraduate fellowship for 2 years and studied this, but also be able to help the average person maneuver this very complicated choice set that we have out there. I mean, we talked about going into Whole Foods and seeing a whole array of like, you go for CoQ10 and you have like 50 different bottles that you're going to be choosing from.
Exactly. And which one is the one to use? How does one, circling around to that question again.
Yeah.
How does one determine in the great amount of products that are out there what the effectiveness is? And is there a percentage? Is there like, well, half of them are good, half of them are bad, 3/4 of them are bad, 1/4 of them are good? It's a very small percentage that are actually authentically produced to create the effect that plant's doing. The rest of it is not. There's a lot of chicanery going on in this industry because
Absolutely.
There's not any backup policing of it.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds to me like a minefield.
It is, and I feel for people, and people want to use these products to help them, but they don't know how to choose the ones that really can help them. And sometimes they'll choose just by price point. Sometimes they'll choose because their neighbor's using this particular brand. So the answer to the question is you have to be your own researcher. You have to find out.
But like you said, you could go to an herbalist.
Yeah.
You could go to an individual like yourself.
Yeah.
And you can pretty much know in fairly short order if their supplement is what it's cracked up to be.
Right. And I know that may be hard to find someone who knows that. Like I said, there's a lot of practitioners now that are educating themselves so that they do know how to recommend a product to someone so they can be helpful in that regard. There is the consumer lab piece, and you can call the manufacturer, but really, you really don't know what's in a lot of these. However, that said, I know many, many are highly valuable. So I would never want to dissuade people from using herbs, plants, and supplements as help, but you are buyer beware. You have to make your choices judiciously. or they won't help. You won't
So
find help.
maybe you could share with us a success story. Tell me about some people that have come to you with a problem and you were able to help them and they got stellar results. Give us an example of something like that. You know, like an illness that they had, what they were currently experiencing, wasn't really working. They're looking for an alternative solution to their problem, and lo and behold, a plant solved it for them. Let's hear one of those stories.
Well, there's a few. One of multiple stories in this vein is people will come to me, women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer. So they are going to go through the traditional treatments of perhaps chemotherapy, radiation, maybe they'll need surgery. But with the radiation, the common side effect of radiation is skin burns. And there's a beautiful plant, I have it here somewhere, but it's calendula. It's a flower. It's a lovely flower, Calendula officinalis. And just a little sidebar, when the Latin binomial of a plant has the name officinalis afterwards, it means that it has a long history in the U.S. pharmacopoeia, in plant medicine. And so, there it is. So this is this beautiful dried calendula plant. And it's just the flower that you use. And we know that calendula is a skin healing plant. It has properties in it that enhance cell regeneration.
Now, where did you get that jar of that flower?
So this one, calendula is really easy to grow and it's beautiful. And I often have it in my garden, but I use it in such great quantity that I bought this calendula. It's organic from Egypt. Yeah, it came a little ways. And
you can buy that from Egypt.
Yeah. You can smell that. It has a real distinct smell.
You just went online for it?
Yeah. But I have a couple of sources that I like that are local. I would recommend getting as local a plant as you can. I happen to know this company is very meticulous about how they package their plants, and they're in sealed bags that are insulated. And, so I know that even though it comes from a ways, it's going to have good healing property. So this plant in either an oil or a salve that I've recommended to women to put on their skin when they have radiation, they tell me 201 that they don't get the radiation burns. And they also
apply that prior to the radiation
or after,
and it doesn't, and their skin does not get burned.
Right, or after. And the two things that happen is what they tell me in the past, and this is where it's tricky in the Western model is. They'll go to their doctor and the doctor will say, "My gosh, I can't believe you didn't burn. How did that happen?" And they would go, "I don't know," because they know that they might be belittled by their choice of choosing an herb as part of this remedy, and they don't want it maybe taken away.
So there is a social stigma in the medical community about this herbalist stuff.
But it's loosening. It's definitely loosening, but it's still there. And I'll have other people say, I told them I use this calendula cream that this integrative nurse practitioner told me about. And the radiologist will go, "We need to get some of that. That's wonderful. That's really great that it works so well." And it doesn't interfere with the treatment, with the treatment of radiation, but it relieves these side effects that are often make these very difficult diagnoses and treatments to endure. Things like nausea, things like fatigue. This is where herbal remedies really shine. And I have if I could go to like my personal philosophy of how to use this stuff, I have a slide.
No, we don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
There's a
we've
slide
made it this far. Why not?
I know, that has a
Go
pyramid.
ahead and launch.
Is there one that has a pyramid? Let's see, where's my pyramid? There it is. So this is how I feel you incorporate it into your health life. So the bottom of this pyramid is your own self-care. It's what you do when you move, you eat, you enjoy company of your family and friends, you go out into nature. This is all very good for you, as we know. Really helpful, good self-care.
Like the self-care, is that like basics, like some of my employees, like we have to brush our teeth and these type of things?
Yeah, right. You have to encourage them to take a shower once in a while. So self-care. And then maybe, so there's all these arrows that are on this pyramid, but let's say now you get a cold and you have made, because you grow in your backyard, you grow sage, and because it's a culinary also, and maybe you have have collected some elderberries from the year before, and you have a tea, and so you have a sore throat. So you make yourself a strong sage tea because you have this in your home pharmacy, because you know a bit about how to take care of yourself. And there are some wonderful books on that. And one is called, I'll just mention it because she's quite wonderful. It's Healthy at Home by Tyrone Lodog. I have that one here too somewhere. And there's other, Rosemary Gladstar has Family Herbal. So you've got your book at home on the shelf, and you have some of your dried teas, and you make your tea, and the sore throat goes away, and you're done. You've taken care of yourself. But let's say you do that, you do the sore throat. Now you're like, it's not working. The things that you have at home are not working now. And you're like, okay, I need some more help here. So you go to your community practitioner, which might be your herbalist, your integrative nurse practitioner, maybe even a massage therapist if it's a sore shoulder that you're not healing, your chiropractor. So you go to this community level practitioner that has some more formalized training to help you with this issue that you haven't been able to help on your own. Now that person helps you and away you go. Or they assess you and say, you know, what I know is not going to help you at this point. You need to go a little further up into the Western physician model. So you go now to a Western trained physician, maybe an orthopedic person, and get this evaluated. And they say, well, you know, actually your joint is degenerated so much that the best thing to do for you is to have some surgery on the shoulder and get that fixed. So you pop up to the top of the pyramid, which is pharmaceutical, surgery, and emergency care, and you get that shoulder fixed. But after that shoulder's fixed, now you go back down to the chiropractor and go, okay, I had this shoulder surgery. How can I help it heal more faster? You go to your physical therapist. You go to your herbalist, and they're like, oh, we have this great arnica cream with St. John's wort oil in it that will really help the muscles and cells heal faster. Or I have my calendula cream. And then you go back down to your home pharmacy, and you have that oil that you made on your shelf. So there's this great way to go up and down the pyramid without shooting way up to the top unless you have an emergency issue. If you get hit by a car, you have a bone sticking out of your leg, there's nobody's going to go bring you a cup of tea right away. Okay, right?
Right.
You need to go to the emergency room, make use of this amazing healthcare education that we've had. I want a surgeon that knows what they're doing, that went to a great school, that, you know, go ahead. I want an anesthesiologist that isn't going to put me under. There's this hilarious video by Monty Python. It's like how to do open heart surgery at home. And the first step is put the cat out. And so it just shows you that it is good to have highly educated people doing some of these things for us. So you want that, but then you want to use these other remedies as you go down. And at the very bottom of that slide that's hard to read, herbal remedies absolutely shine with skin issues, with respiratory care, with GI tract stuff, with mild mental health issues. They really work well. And I've seen that as a practitioner in the Western model, as an herbalist. You want to be a little more cautious with people if it's a heart issue, if it's a severe illness or injury, particularly mental health or cardiac. You may not want to go right to the herbs until you've had another opinion from somebody who's in that professional realm. So that's how I recommend to people to use herbs in their life.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have learned an amazing amount of information, but it's only the beginning.
Right.
So why don't we pick this up in a part 2 and get a little more involved in specific plants, specific remedies that are going on, and carry this conversation on our next podcast.
I would love to, because I love plants as medicine.
Well, I love this information, and I think it's just the beginning of the information that the viewer is going to need to basically have a comprehensive overall knowledge of what's going on. So you're obviously extremely knowledgeable. We're trying to get you out there so a lot of people can find you. How can they find you?
Well, I do have a website, laureencampana.com.
Let's spell it out, LAURENCAMPANA.com.
Yeah, and you can reach me there by email or send me a message, and you can find out, you can reach me that way. You can see what I do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been awesome.
Good to be with you.
This is the most I've talked to my sister in 10 years. It's been great. And there was no fights. It wasn't even Thanksgiving. It's been fantastic. I mean, we got to keep this going
more
on.
Often, yeah.
You know, it's on plants. There wasn't any turkeys involved, so it all worked out great. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you soon. Take care.